Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the weekly Wednesday for the Financial Freedom newsletter, where every week, every Wednesday, we delve into something inspirational, motivational, something excerpt taken from the Financial Freedom weekly newsletter. Wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, Google, be sure to click the like, subscribe, share, comment. And without ado, let's get into the show. Guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's guest, Holly Porter. She's actually got quite an extraordinary story, which we'll hear about: the preciousness of life, the fragility of life, and bouncing back, resilient, living life. So, Holly, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you have an interesting beacon of resilience and inspiration. You turned it into becoming an author, giving back, and a true survivor. So tell people your story.
Oh gosh, it's a long story, probably longer than we have, but just to sum it up, I've always been an entrepreneur my whole life. I envy those that have the big degrees on the walls, as most of your listeners probably do. That just wasn't the way I learned. I probably could have a doctorate degree for all the classes I've taken, but I took what I wanted to pay attention to. So that's how I roll. So I started about 12 doing little entrepreneurship things and realized that was going to be my journey. And I mean, I've had jobs, but over the years, I've always loved owning my own companies. And I've had 11 startups now. I've dabbled in lots of different things, even besides that. But that's just kind of been my journey. And I got a quick halt a couple years ago. Like right now, I was in the hospital 2 years ago with COVID for 70 days, and I was intubated 2 times, had a trach, had sepsis, and spent many days, probably should have died. And I didn't. And so I had some what I call God gifts happen. I don't know what your listener beliefs are, but there were a lot of out-of-body and near-death experiences I had. It just changed my world. And so life looks different. I have long COVID. I started 2 new companies about 4 months after I got out of the hospital. I was still pretty sick, but when you have a calling and you're told to do something, that's what you do. And so one was a nonprofit for long COVID sufferers, and it's called Adventure Bucket Wish Foundation. And that's a 501c3. So that is slowly getting some traction. We're almost ready to have our second gala November 4th of 2023. And then the other company was something I was working on before I got sick, but it's my retirement plan, I call it. And it's a software company that I'm working on. So that will launch by end of year this year for a soft launch. And so that's been busy working on lots of things.
Yeah. What's interesting is what did you learn about the because I've actually recently really kind of like the trivial things, and what did you learn about the incredible power of the human spirit and the fragility of life? It can be, this is not, we are renting life. It's not, nothing is. So, when we tell the audience, about appreciating the moment.
Yeah. Well, I never was afraid to die. I've just never been one of those people. I always thought I'd die young. Isn't that interesting? And so when I was in the hospital, I thought, well, I guess this is it, right? And it's not that I didn't have a will to live. I did. Obviously, I did. I'm here. But there were so many times that I just saw different things that gave me that hope and that will to be here. I mean, when people say, what's your why? That used to make me crazy because I felt like, I have kids, I have grandkids, that's, yeah, sure, that to be my why. And what can you do for the world and humanity if you do make money, for instance? Like that never was a motivator for me. It was always people, it was always relationships. Yet, how much more good can you do in the world? And so my eyes got really open to so many more bigger possibilities. And I never felt like I really had a purpose. I was doing all these things, for instance, for 8 years prior, traveling, writing my book, speaking, meeting people all over the world, and it lit me up because it was all relationship building. But I never knew really why I was doing that. And after, I was in a coma for a lot of the time that I was in the hospital. And after that, I felt like that purpose, it was like lifted, like the curtains open, and it's like, oh, okay, now the show gets to start. And the reason you had all those relationship building opportunities was for what I'm building now, not as much as what I was building then. And so sometimes our perspective just needs to shift and just to change how we look at things. And so I feel like I'm still the same person, but yet I'm not the same person. And I'm new to the near-death experience, the out-of-body experiences, the spiritual transformation. Like, those are all new words to me. And so it's been a whole new journey checking and listening and studying those things. But I'm here to tell you they happen.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And I've actually studied, I've been really curious. Early on, I've just been like to observe people. The main paradigm is like, you grow up, you go to work, you accumulate, you just basically amass. And that's kind of like the paradigm that the mainstream shifts. But it's interesting because, when you leave, there's like the financial resources are not good. They're only good for here. They may be good for your heirs and all of that. But, there's a little bit more, we spend so much like hoarding and just scarcity and kind of like, it's like stockpiling, it's like if we're running out of food, our ideas around, money and spirituality are just so convoluted and just kind of messed up. I think that's because they basically want everybody to consume and just go out and buy cars and houses and just, So one thing is talking about, so you describe what is like the universe reached out to you and now you have a calling. So talk about your inspiring journey, your philanthropy, and messages of hope and inspiration. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, my experiences were interesting for me, right? When I knew I was going to live, the story behind that was I had a cousin that had a spiritual experience about, my husband was also sick with COVID, but not in the hospital. And all of some past relatives came to her and while she was praying for us. And so basically she wrote this text to my sisters who were helping me at the hospital and said, read this to me, because she really felt like I needed to hear it. And it was basically her version of what she was, having happen to her. Excuse me. And I remember being awake for that and being coherent and then going back in a coma and then being really mad. Like, I was so angry because I kind of like, she's more like a sister. So it was like that sibling rivalry. That's what I'm trying to say. And it was like, why did she get that? I'm the one laying here dying. Why didn't I get that? And at that moment, my mom had passed away about a year before. And a lot of people had told me, your mom was on the right side of you a lot while you were in the hospital. And I knew that, and that was on the right side, and came to me and said, it's not your time to go. You have things to do still. It's not your time to go. And as she did that, the whole front of me was filled with, both sets of grandparents who had passed, my favorite aunt, a grandbaby that had just died 6 months before, a brother, a sister-in-law, like my favorite, people I love that had passed on. And they all came in white in front of me. And then when my mom told me I needed to fight, it was just this chant of fight. And every time they would say fight, a new group of, my kids and then my friends and then all these people I knew had been praying for me, kept coming to, you couldn't see in front of me as far back as you could go. There was people and support. And that was kind of the turning point in that illness journey where I knew, okay, I'm going to live, so I better fight. And that was one particular spiritual experience where I actually had that vision painted. And of course, the people are over on the side, with me in my bed, not in front of me like they were. But for painting's sake, that's how we did it. And And so I have a healing room, I call it, where I go in my hyperbaric that I bought for all of my long COVID things. And and it's there and I can look at it and it brings me joy. Unfortunately, they could only paint 28 people in it. And that was really hard to pick because we have a huge family. And so figuring out like what friends get to be in it and what family members and siblings, which of course, all of them. Yeah. Anyway, so that was just one experience. There were so many.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The whole spiritual realm, and ultimately we're spiritual beings, and it's not really a matter of religion. It's just kind of these representations could be your ancestors or your really, and the way the universe works. I really find it really fascinating. These stories. What is the core message or philosophy that guides your work in the world of your advocacy?
I think it's spreading hope. I think the world is quickly losing that. And people always say, well, how do you get hope? Where do you, I think I think if we start with the smallest things, it's hard to picture the big things if you can't picture the small things, right? And so I think it's the gratitude and just finding what can give you hope today. What can give me hope in this moment, for one thing, and then today, and then this week? And to me, that's almost your dream building, your goal building, if you will. To me, all starts with the hope that you believe that it can happen, and it will. I mean, I'm a great manifester. I always have been. My husband will say, I'm afraid if you say you want that, you're going to get it. Don't say it, and he'll kid. He supports me, but he knows that if there's something I want to succeed in, it's going to happen, because you just have to have that belief and that knowing. And that's a gift. I feel like that's a gift that some of us have, is that gift of knowing.
Yeah, gift of knowing, and this gift of intention, like you just kind of intention, and it's really powerful, the power of intention, and then once you become cognizantly aware, your intention, you can manifest, activate the law of attraction. Talk about balancing act, because you have a multifaceted life, and doing so many different things. Talk about how you balance everything.
Yeah. Well, talk about creation. Way back when I graduated as a junior from high school, not because I was academically so smart. I just wasn't a school person. It was just, I was a life person. And so I graduated, and I always wanted to get married and have 3 jobs and have my family. And it was interesting because that intention was set very early on. And be careful what you wish for and hope for, because it really can happen. And I feel like that's never ended. Like, I had my family really young, and I always had like 3 different minimum things I was dabbling in. So I started teaching people multiple streams of income, and I had a company called Prosperity Profilers. There was a lot of things that surrounded that. And I just felt like when people would tell you, if you just do one thing, I thought if I was going to hear that one more time, I was going to go crazy, because I knew for me, I would never just do one thing. Now, doing several things and doing them well is a whole nother thing. And to me, I study personality profiling. And to me, that's a personality style, because there's so many personality styles that cannot function with more than 1 or 2 things, right? And so it's that juggling act with the spinning plates and figuring out. And it's also, when you're an entrepreneur, it's rob Peter, pay Paul, if I can say that. And it's like that constant figuring out, oh, where's my time going to go? Because where we focus our energy, that's what works, right? That's what grows. And so if you're focusing your time on relationships, that's going to grow. If you're focusing your time all on your work, that's what you're going to get more work, and that's what you're going to be doing with it. And so I feel like, yeah, it's just that balancing act of figuring out how to juggle it all. I still have, I don't know, probably 5 companies now, maybe 6 anyway, but
yeah,
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, where focus goes, energy flows. In this idea of what you were describing, intention and manifesting, it's awareness. The other question I had is, you have this, and then I love this idea of adventure bucket wish foundation, and you call it a gift from the divine. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, that was one of my gifts I received when I was in my coma. And I was not only basically told, I guess you'd say, to start this, but the name as well. Like when I was clear enough and the brain fog had left enough to where I started remembering a lot more, like the name was just there. I already knew what it was. And the wishes were the original idea, and now it's become a little bit more awareness. The goal is, there's 65 million plus people suffering from long COVID. There's people in the medical industry that don't even know what long COVID is. Like, how can they not, right? I mean, so when a world is wanting to move away and just shove COVID down, like it never happened, there's still people dying from it, number one. Number two, there's tons of people that are still suffering. And so that idea was, that was one of my gifts. And I always wanted a nonprofit, but I never could really put my finger on what that looked like, because I'm big in philanthropy and I love supporting so many different groups. There were so many good ones and nothing really just stuck. I just was like, no, there's something out there. And after this experience I had, there it was. And so that's where we're headed with it.
I love this conversation. I wish we could have more time. And, as we come to the end of this, how can people contact you, follow you, check out your work, as well as what message of hope and inspiration would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, I think start with the gratitude. The message would be just every night before you go to bed, think of 3 things that happened that day, even if it was a rotten day, that you can be grateful and happy for. Because when you set that intention before you go to sleep, I believe you sleep better. And I believe when you wake up, you're happier.
Yeah, I love that. And it looks like you're on most social media platforms. Looks like you're on all of them: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. So all of Holly's resources will be in the links and show notes. And with that, thanks so much for coming on and giving such a powerful message of hope and inspiration for the listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Bye for now.
I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful, inspirational, motivational piece. Again, wherever you are listening, if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Amazon, Audible. And without much ado, be sure to thank this show's sponsors, and we'll see you next week.